Welcome back to Lex Talk, everybody. Season 3, and you know what that means, right? More deep dives into the fascinating world of English and linguistics here in Thailand, especially for all of our awesome educators, parents, and anyone who's just passionate about the English language.
Always a pleasure to be back.
We are so glad to have you. Today we're tackling a question I'm sure a lot of you have thought about before. How do Thai cultural norms, really impact the way people learn and use English? We're going way beyond grammar rules, textbooks, to uncover those hidden influences that can really shape the language journey for Thai speakers.
Yeah, it's a topic that's often overlooked, but it's so crucial for understanding why some approaches work really well here and others just fall flat.
Exactly. So for someone who's maybe new to teaching English in Thailand, or even a parent helping their kid with English, what's the most important thing to grasp about this whole cultural context thing?
Well, think of it this way. Language isn't just a set of words and grammar rules. It's like deeply woven into a society's values and how people actually interact, right? So for Thai learners, cultural norms, they almost become like this invisible curriculum that just runs alongside their formal English education.
Invisible curriculum. I like that. It's like this whole set of unspoken rules that can really make or break someone's success with the language.
Precisely. And one of the most prominent norms that educators often run into is this huge emphasis on hierarchy and respect for teachers.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful part of Thai culture, but it can create a really unique dynamic in the classroom.
Yeah, I've seen this firsthand. You have students who are so bright and capable, but they might not want to speak up or ask questions or even disagree with the teacher.
Exactly. Because questioning authority, even in like a purely academic way, can feel like you're not being respectful. So you might have students who totally get a concept, but they would never think about correcting a teacher, even if the teacher made a mistake.
So how does that actually play out when it comes to learning the language? Asking questions and being involved is so important for learning any language.
Absolutely. And that's where the challenge comes in. Not speaking up can lead to more of a passive way of learning, one that's all about memorizing instead of communicating. Students may do really well on grammar tests, but they have trouble having a conversation because they're so scared of making a mistake.
It's like they're stuck in this loop of always having to be perfect, and being wrong is worse than actually using the language.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another really interesting cultural concept, one that has a big impact on learning English. Kreng Jai, this uniquely Thai idea of not wanting to cause confrontation or make anyone uncomfortable.
Kreng Jai.
Right.
It's everywhere here, but it's kind of hard to explain.
Let's say you're in a meeting and somebody presents an idea that you really disagree with. In a lot of Western cultures, you might just say what you think, even have a little debate. But in Thailand, being that direct could be seen as being disrespectful, making the other person lose face.
So what would a Thai person do?
They might kind of disagree in a roundabout way, maybe saying something like, "That's a really interesting idea," or "I need to think about that a little more." It's all about keeping things harmonious and being considerate of the other person's feelings.
But if you're speaking English, especially in a business setting or an academic one, that indirect way of communicating could cause a lot of misunderstandings.
Right.
For sure.
Imagine a Thai student trying to negotiate a business deal in English. If they're not okay with saying what they need or pushing back on things, they might end up saying yes to something they don't really want.
So how do we help bridge this gap between the indirect communication that's part of Thai culture and that more direct way that's expected in English?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we'll be looking at after a short break.
Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back with some practical strategies for both teachers and learners on how to work with these cultural differences and unlock the power of being able to really communicate in English. And don't forget to follow LexTalk on all platforms: our website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify. You can find us everywhere at LexTalk Podcast.
We would love to connect with you.
Let's talk, let's learn, let's LexTalk. Welcome back to LexTalk. So before the break, we were talking about how these really deep Thai cultural values like respect for hierarchy and Kreng Jai can sometimes, make things a little tricky when it comes to learning English. But we don't just want to focus on the problems, do we? We want to find solutions.
Exactly. Being aware of the issues is a good first step. But the fun part is figuring out how to bridge these cultural gaps and really help Thai speakers become confident English communicators.
So let's pretend we're teachers for a second. What are some things teachers can do to help Thai students do well with English?
I think one of the best things we can do is move away from focusing only on perfect grammar and make the classroom a safe space where students feel okay with taking risks with the language. Like, what if mistakes weren't seen as failures, but as steps towards fluency?
Yeah, it's like encouraging that idea that it's good to grow right, where it's
Mhm.
okay for students to try new things, even if they mess up a little. How can teachers actually create that kind of atmosphere?
Well, it starts with little things. Instead of correcting every single mistake, teachers can focus on praising students for trying and for the progress they're making. And you can also do more group activities like working in pairs or small groups where students can practice speaking without feeling so much pressure.
That makes sense. It's less scary than having to speak perfectly in front of the whole class. It helps them feel more confident in a relaxed way.
Hmm.
And I bet this goes well with that whole Sanuk idea we were talking about before. Making learning fun.
For sure, learning a new language shouldn't feel like a chore, right? When students are having fun, they're more likely to relax and use the language in a real way.
So it's about finding that balance between structured learning and making it playful and engaging. Earlier, we talked about how being indirect can lead to misunderstandings in English. How can teachers help students with this?
I think it's all about awareness. We can directly teach them about the different ways people communicate directly and indirectly. Give them examples of how some phrases can mean different things in Thai and in English, and role-playing different situations can really help.
So, like, you could have students practice asking for things or saying what they think in a more direct way, which they might not be used to in Thai.
Right. It's about giving them the tools and confidence to deal with these cultural differences. And remember, we don't want them to forget their Thai communication style. We just want to give them more options so they can choose the right way to communicate for each situation.
So they're like bilingual in culture too. We mentioned before how the Thai education system focuses on memorization instead of using English in real life. How can we help students go beyond textbooks and become fluent in a way that they can actually use?
I think project-based learning is really helpful here. Like imagine instead of just studying grammar rules, students have to create a video presentation in English or do a pretend job interview or even make a website.
It gives them a reason to use the language right. It's not just about memorizing words. It's about using what they've learned to solve problems, to make something new, or to communicate their ideas.
Exactly. And it really taps into that creativity and Sanook. That's such a big part of Thai culture. When students are excited about a project, the language learning just happens naturally because they're focused on achieving a goal.
Yeah, it's like that saying, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn.
Yeah.
A lot of teachers are probably thinking, okay, this sounds good, but how do I actually fit it into my lessons?
Hmm.
It's not about changing everything at once.
Yeah.
Even small changes can make a big difference. Start with more pair work and group activities. Add a small project once a month. And the most important thing,
Encourage those questions. Don't stop them from being curious. Exactly. Let's create classrooms where students feel like it's okay to speak up, to challenge ideas, to make mistakes, and learn from them. That's how real fluency grows.
I love that. It's about helping them love learning and wanting to learn, not just about getting the right answer on a test. We've talked a lot about what teachers can do, but what about the students themselves? What advice would you give to Thai speakers who are working on improving their English?
First of all, don't forget that your culture is a strength, not a weakness. Be proud of how you communicate and use it to your advantage. And at the same time,
Don't be afraid to try new things.
Mhm.
Try different ways of expressing yourself.
yes, look for chances to talk to native English speakers. Don't worry about making mistakes. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
It's that classic advice, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
But it's true. The more you use the language, the easier it will get. And there are so many resources out there, like online courses, language exchange partners, even podcasts like ours.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The main thing is to find what works best for you and make learning English a part of your everyday life. And don't forget to have fun with it.
I think that's so important. Learning a language should be enjoyable, not stressful. We've talked about a lot today, but it feels like we've just started to explore this really interesting topic.
There's always more to discover, right? And that's what's so great about learning languages. It's an adventure that never ends.
Well said. I think we have just enough time to talk about one more important thing. It's not just about individual students or teachers. It's about making a better environment for learning English here in Thailand, an environment where everyone feels welcome and supported. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really important point. We need to move away from this idea that there's only one right way to speak English. Let's appreciate all the different accents, communication styles, and cultural influences that make the language so rich.
I like that. It's about recognizing that English isn't just a way to talk to people. It's a reflection of who we are, where we come from, and the stories we have to share.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. When we embrace this diversity, we create a more exciting and lively language world for everyone.
That's so true. It's like, imagine all the awesome things that could happen if we were really open to all the different kinds of English that people speak here in Thailand. I mean, it would make the language so much more dynamic and exciting.
Sure,
Right.
for sure. And think about what that would do for people learning English. When they see that their own way of speaking and their experiences are valued, it gives them so much more confidence and makes them want to really use the language.
It's like we're saying, hey, your English is totally valid. What
Yeah.
you've been through is important, and we want to hear what you have to say. It just creates a much more welcoming space for learning.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we really need to encourage, not just in schools, but everywhere in our society. Let's celebrate the fact that Thailand has so many languages and cultures.
I totally agree. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. Thanks so much for being here today and sharing your expertise. I know everyone listening has learned so much from this deep dive.
It's always a pleasure. I always get so much out of these conversations.
And for everyone listening, we'd love to hear from you. What have you noticed about how Thai culture affects the way people learn English? Have you ever had those moments where you suddenly understand why something worked or didn't work with your students or your kids? Tell us about your experiences in the comments.
We're really interested in hearing what you've seen too.
And don't forget to join us next time for another awesome episode of LexTalk. We'll be talking about something that's both funny and really interesting. Humor across languages. We're going to explore why some jokes just don't work when you translate them and how humor is different in different cultures. Get ready for some laughs and some cool insights about language.
Oh, it's going to be a good one.
Make sure you tune in. And like always, remember to follow LexTalk on all our platforms, website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify. We're at LexTalk Podcast everywhere.
Let's talk, let's learn.
Let's LexTalk.